Hello and welcome to Mythmakers. Mythmakers is the podcast for fantasy fans and fantasy creatives, brought to you by the Oxford Centre for Fantasy. My name is Julia Golding. I'm an author, but I'm also the director of the centre. And today I'm joined by a special guest. His name is Andrew Head and he's based in Australia. Andrew's joined one of our creative writing courses, but Andrew also is blind and so is the expert among us on audiobooks. And I thought he'd be brilliant to get Andrew along to have a chat with me about accessing fantasy books in the audio version. So hello, Andrew.
Hello, Julia. Nice to be here.
So Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself and your reading habits and your journey to having a go at creative writing.
Well, as mentioned, I'm blind, so I do access a lot of my books and material in general through computer that talks, or back in the day it was cassettes and CDs.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and now a lot on Audible. But I still enjoy getting a CD. There's a thriller author, Matthew Riley, who produced, I get his books on CD for Christmas just because it's nice having physical book still sometimes. Yes, my journey to creative writing. I guess books have given me so much enjoyment over the years. And I've always considered myself a bit of a storyteller. As a child, I had a tape recorder, and I'd record stories and stuff on cassette as well.
That's actually one of those techniques that all writers should try, is sort of speaking out your story, because you can really hear it, properly hear it if you do that. I remember doing that on the days of cassette players before we had phones that could record. I would sit there and press play on my sort of clunky tape recorder and read my stories out. It's a really good tip to do that for everybody. So,
definitely.
And Andrew, you've been managing to interact in the online course brilliantly, and I presume that's partly to do with the huge advances in software allowing you to sort of hear in real time what's being put up in text. Is that how it works?
Yes. So I have used a screen reader on the Apple products called VoiceOver, and it basically speaks everything, all the text that appears on screen.
And it's been a real joy, actually, to discover this possibility for us on the course, and you're really enriching it. Right.
Oh, thank you.
Let's get down to business. Let's talk about your favourite books. So I've suggested that you want to say a little bit about what you look for in an audiobook, and then we're going to have a look at your top 5. So first of all, when you're sort of playing the samples, what are you looking for when you're testing your next best listen?
I'm a bit biased. I don't particularly. There's a few American accents I enjoy, which I'll get onto in a bit. But I mainly look for. I think fantasy is better when it's read by a British person.
Oh, right.
Yes, that's just me. I'm half Australian, half British, so very proud of both heritages. British is better. And someone that has good inflection or expression when they're reading, but and especially when it comes to what the characters are saying in the story, obviously, and someone who can do different voices for the different characters, so that you always know who's speaking, even before they read out, this person said.
Do you have a preference? So, say if it's a book with more than one point of view, sometimes the producers do it with different readers, male, female, for example, or sometimes it's just the same person reading all of it. Do you have a preference when it comes to that?
I don't really like. I guess if it isn't there, then that's if it's a whole. Do you mean like if it's a whole chapter from a female and then a chapter from a male?
Yeah, no. For example, I've had a psychological thriller which had 2 points of view, and the way that the people who produced that audiobook decided to do that was to have a male read the male part and a female read the female part, which, that's quite good because absolutely clear who's speaking. But sometimes if one of those voices isn't that great, you might not bother to listen to it, which, if you don't like one of the voices, for example. I've had that recently. I started listening to something and one of the voices was really grating. And I thought, no, I can't listen to this.
Yes. Yes, I do think it enhances the experience when you're reading a book if a chapter from a female point of view is done by a female. Doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't always have to be, but if it can, then all the better.
And do you like to sort of plunge into really long listens? In my household, I've got a son who loves loves sort of great big fantasy doorstop books. And I know that he listens to lots. And we had a conversation and I was recommending something. And he said, oh, no, that's only 10 hours. I only get ones which are over 20 hours. I think he's getting his money worth. But does that matter to you at
all? Well, obviously, if I really enjoy the book or the series, the longer the better. But, shorter, if it's a good story, a shorter book won't stop me getting it.
Okay, right. Let's go down to your top 5 then. So I don't know if you've ranked these or if they're all like a flat, they're all equally good. So I'll let you decide how you're going to place your books.
Well, I think some of them I'm going to talk about because there's a few different versions. So if you like, I can go into the book and then what I like about different versions.
Yeah, far away.
All right. Well, obviously, well, it's obvious to us. I'm going to start with The Lord of the Rings.
Hooray!
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to put all 3 of them into one. So I quite like the recent Andy Serkis recordings of both The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah.
I think he does a very good job with different voices, and he's got a lot of expression and enthusiasm in his voice, just even when he's reading the text when someone's not speaking, like if he's describing a scene or something. And in contrast to that, I know you have a different opinion, but I'm not all that fussed about the Rob Ingalls recording of The Lord of the Rings. I did hear it and I did enjoy it, but I do think he didn't do as good a job on the voices. So for me, it wasn't as engaging. But yeah, that's just me. I do really like Martin Shaw's reading of The Hobbit as well. I never knew why they abridged it. If I could, I'd abolish all abridged books. I really think Martin Shaw should have just done it unabridged, because having now heard it unabridged, I'm like, oh, well, so many little bits were just chopped out here and there, and I don't see why. And in terms of The Hobbit, Martin Shaw would be my favorite narrator because he was the first one I heard, and I've just grown up with him reading The Hobbit, and I think he's done a very good job with different characters' voices, and he's got a nice voice to listen to in general. And then, of course, he does a good job of the Silmarillion as well, and that was, of course, unabridged. So
a fantastic job, because that's much harder material to put across.
Yes,
you need a really good voice to do that one, I think.
Well, if that's unabridged, why didn't they do The Hobbit anyway? And then, of course, there's the radio plays of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And funny story, actually, I got the Lord of the Rings radio play as an 11-year-old, and for a few years, I thought that radio play was the whole, the BBC 13-episode one. I thought that was the whole story. And then someone was like, a friend of mine was like, no, that's definitely, like, there's heaps more. And, at first I was disappointed because I thought, oh, like, I've been, missing out on stuff. But then I was like, oh, wow, there's like heaps more. So then I went and found the Rob Ingalls narration and read it all the way through.
I think the thing about the BBC radio plays, they did a really good job on the music.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, a radio play is the ultimate. Well, you got different actors for each part, so it really brings it to life. And of course, for me as a blind person, it in a lot of ways, a radio play is a lot better than a movie because you're only listening to it, so you always know what's going on all the time.
I think it's a really well chosen, well edited production that it's really stood the test of time. That one, hasn't it?
Oh yeah.
So,
and I know there's.
So you rate of the Lord of the Rings. If I said, I'm putting you on a desert island with your cassette tape, and you can only take either the BBC version or the Andy Serkis version, which are you going to choose, Andrew? Horrible question, I know.
It is. It would have to be the radio play.
I think that's the right answer because you get a whole sort of collection of people there, and I'll allow you to have a version, a Braille version of Lord of the Rings to fill in the bits they miss out.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's your Desert Island book for you. It would be my Desert Island book as well.
The Braille version's huge, by the way. Each of the 3 books is about 10 volumes of Braille.
That sounds wonderful.
So you got 30 volumes. It's big.
You could build a shelter with it at the same time. And just take one brick out each time you progress in the story.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that's your first of your reviews. What's your number 2 on your fantasy hit list?
The second, in my opinion, the second greatest of the Inklings, you can see where this is going, is good old C.S. Lewis. And again, the Chronicles of Narnia radio plays. And there's 2 versions that I quite like. There's the BBC version, and I'm not sure if you've heard them, but the Focus on the Family versions.
No, I don't know those. That's new to me. That's really interesting. So Focus on the Family, is that an American production or?
I think it is, but they use all British actors, as is appropriate. And at the beginning of them, they have his, what would you call it, his foster son or stepson, Douglas Gresham. Yeah, he does a sort of a introductory commentary to all of the books before they get into it. And I've got both. And the really nice thing about the focus on the family ones is I think it's more of the story. They've got a narrator, whereas with the BBC ones, they don't. So I think, you're really able to get almost the whole story with, the narrator and then all the actors coming in at the various parts. And I did listen to an interview with the creators, and they said that, they did have to add in, like they added in other scenes for a bit more dramatic or explaining things a bit more as they do with any adaptation. But I think the focus on the family ones are more special because they're more of the book as C.S. Lewis intended it, I think, which is just lovely.
That sounds really interesting because famously the battle in Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is largely told in retrospect and is about half a page. So if you're going to dramatize that, you need to put in a bit of live action moments, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty much, from what I remember, it's pretty much Aslan gets to the battlefield and the witch is mine, and then the witch is like, no, it's great.
That's it, yeah.
That it, yeah. in both versions. And some of the actors are better in focus on the family, but then some actors are better in the BBC one. So, but again, if I had to choose, I'd take the focus on the family radio ones over the
thank you for mentioning those, because I'm now of course going to go and look those up. So number 3 on your list, Andrew.
Number 3 would have to be the Wheel of Time series. And there's actually this one and another one that have recently been made into TV shows. But I really like the Wheel of Time because it does what we were talking about before, where if there's a chapter from a male's point of view, there's a male narrator and a female narrator for the chapters from female's point of view. So that's always exciting. I prefer the male narrator, Michael Kramer. He's American, and the female is Kate Redding. And fun fact, they're actually married. So it was very easy for them to do the Wheel of Time. I didn't know that when I was reading it, and then I got Audible gave us a Christmas present. You could download of different narrators' memories of Christmas, and they both featured in it. And Michael Kramer said, "Yeah, for those who don't know, Kate and I are married." So that was special because it's like, oh, okay, that that makes it more. When I reread the Wheel of Time, makes it more special.
So that's many, 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 many hours of listening in that. You could probably spend half a year listening to that.
Oh no, it took me a year and 3 months, and for 2.5 of those months I was overseas. If I hadn't gone overseas, it would have probably taken me a year. But either way, a long time. And that was pretty, like, I wasn't. I'd left study and I was looking for work at the time, and I was nearly single, so I had a lot. I just read it and read it and read it and read it, and it still took me that long with some pretty heavy go.
So going back to the desert island scenario, it might actually be quite a good pick for that. Because it might take you an hour to be, a year to be rescued from your desert island. That was number 3. So where are we going on for number 4?
Well, it would have to be The Witcher, which is another book that's been made into a TV series. And the narrator, it's just one narrator for that. He's British, and he's got a very nice voice to listen to when he's reading, but he also does a very good job of the different voices, and it's very clear who's speaking. And again, that's a whole series of books. They're more your 10-hour versions.
Yeah, and they're very much, they've got the sort of storyteller within it as well, haven't they? In those ones, because it's sort of more of episodic than some of the larger, huge story arc, fantasy epics.
Yeah.
Quite often the Witcher goes off and fights a monster, and that's what you're doing in that particular episode.
Yeah, for the first 2 books, it is a lot like that, and then it gets more coherent when you get to book 3. Yeah.
Okay, so just recap, because we're going to go to find out what your last pick is. We've done Lord of the Rings, where Martin Shaw and the BBC version were fighting it out. We've done the Chronicles of Narnia, where it was the family. Sorry, tell me the name of that again.
Focus on the Family Radio
Focus on the Family. Focus on the Family win out. Yeah. Number 3 was Wheel of Time. Number 4 was Witcher. So number 5, last place.
I guess they're not in any real particular order. I should have put this one at number 3. And I feel silly for making it last, but oh well, the order changed in my head, I guess. But it'd have to be, of course, the Harry Potter series read by Stephen Fry.
Ah,
yes. And Stephen Fry does a fantastic job with all the different voices. And his, the way he reads, a lot of inflection and enthusiasm, if that makes sense. Not sure if that's the right word, but yeah. And there's this is a good chance to talk about it. Put it out there. A lot of blind people prefer the narrator Jim Dale, who does the American audiobook of Harry Potter. Why there needs to be a separate one for Americans, I don't know. But anyway, a lot of the complaint is Stephen Fry reads too slow compared to Jim Dale. And I've heard bits and pieces of Jim Dale reading them, and his voice, the way he does voices are just nothing compared to Stephen Fry. One example was Uncle Vernon sounded really. Jim Dale gave Uncle Vernon from what I remember, a real nasally voice, whereas it clearly says he's got a booming voice, and Stephen Fry just nails it. Such a good job.
I did feel at one stage when I had small children that the soundtrack to our parenting was Stephen Fry reading Harry Potter, because they'd put it on the children go to sleep. Yes, they'd be listening to it. Someone somewhere in the house would be listening to it. So I've got his Harry, Ron, and Hermione in his tone just ingrained in my head. As soon as you said that, you must say it thousands of times during the course of reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is again another very pleasurable listening experience. So we've got Lord of the Rings. Let's put them in the order you were thinking of. So we've got Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter,
The Wheel of Time,
and Witcher.
And The Witcher.
Is there any other sort of sneaky little gem that doesn't fit in the sort of the big players that you've come across that you'd like to mention? A sort of honourable mention for anything?
Yes. There's a fantasy series by Raymond Feist, and there's a few different series, but the one I've read is the the Rift War saga, and it's narrated by an American named Sean Mangan. I think he's Canadian. I'm not sure, but he sounds very American. But it's a very nice, smooth voice, and he also he's very good with different accents in particular, which I know it's not fantasy, but he reads if you want a good idea of how he does accents, you should read the Matthew Riley's books, where he's a thriller writer and, dealing with lots of different countries. So he does really good, accents for the different countries of our world. But I first encountered him in the Raymond Feist Rift War Saga fantasy series and thought he did a fantastic job. He gives, I don't know if you've read it, but he gives the invaders in that series Japanese accents.
So he's really sort of stretching into other areas to find a way of differentiating voices, which it must be really hard. That must be so hard as a voice artist to think, how am I going to make these different aliens sound different from each other? I noticed that in the Marvel series, in Captain Marvel, they gave one set of who you thought bad guys Australian accents. And I thought, oh, that's a bit out there. And then, of course, the twist was they weren't actually bad. They turned out to be allies. And you should have guessed, because they don't ever think of Australians as being bad guys. Whereas if they had a toffee-nosed British accent, well, of course they're going to be a bad guy. Goes without saying. I'd like to sort of throw in here for something I listened to a lot when I was growing up, which you might know, which started as a radio play, is A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a fantastic lesson, in sci-fi, but we still allow that as fantasy. And that's extremely entertaining and different from the others we've mentioned, in that it's got quite a lot of parody and jokes in it, connected to our real world.
I've listened to both the radio play and the proper books where Douglas Adams actually reads them. And he does a fantastic job. Sometimes authors read their own books and they're just, they're not a voice actor by profession, so they're not quite as good, but he's done a superb job.
Excellent. So Andrew, we always finish the podcast, as I think you might be aware, of picking where in all the fantasy world is the best place for something. And as we've been talking about audio versions, I thought we'd choose where in all the fantasy worlds is the best place to be a speaker or an orator. The emphasizing here voices. Have you got a favorite fantasy world for appreciation of voice?
Yes, I thought long and hard about this, because I wanted to choose, I had in mind to choose, that everyone expects that you're going to go for one of the Inklings. And I tried to think of a different one, but I couldn't. I was going to mention two, one from Tolkien and one from something else, just to, I don't know, balance things out a bit. But I couldn't, the only place I could think of, no, I'll just go with this. Well, it'd have to be Rivendell, wouldn't it? And the Hall of Fire, I think, where they had after the feast, they had all the tales being told and that sort of thing. Yes.
I've always wondered. That's one of those areas where I don't think any read version is as good as the one you imagine, because the description is so beautiful about how it sort of melds into dreams. Your imagination has to fill in what that most beautiful elven voice would sound like.
They tell a lot of tales there. I think, you had an image of, myself as a hobbit there with my hobbit wife having some mead after a feast hosted by Elrond himself. So, it's a nice image.
It's definitely a great place to go. I came up with a different emphasis, really. I wanted to mention there's a book called The Spoken Mage series by Melanie Sellier. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because the way magic works in her world, magic is often the budget of magic. How do you do magic in a fantasy world is often one of the sort of key world building questions. And in her world, it's normally a world where people write down the magic, the spell, and when they rip the parchment, that's when the spell is released. It's like a stored power. And into this world comes her main character, who, of course, is the first spoken mage, the person who can say the spell without writing it down first. But it's not quite as simple as that. She has to formulate it in a certain way. But the way that Melanie makes the spoken word so powerful in this series is brilliant. It's a very enjoyable series. It's a coming of age story, really. She then goes to a college and has to learn how to fit in with the ordinary mages, and then of course there's a wider political situation where she's then sent to the front line because she's able to do very quick, rapid responses to other people's attacks by magic because she doesn't have to write things down. Anyway, it's an excellent series, very enjoyable. If you like sort of Tamora Pierce and that kind of writing of magic where people come of age, Ursula Le Guin, the Wizard of Earthsea series. If you like that, you might well like these books. So look them up. I think there is. Yeah. Yes, there are audio versions as well. I've got them, so you can access them. You don't have to find another Braille doorstop. You can listen to these. Anyway, Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. And I think we should probably make this a regular feature to help promote accessing fantasy books through the spoken versions of them. So if you don't mind, we'll invite you back in a few months' time to see what you've listened to since then. So thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Mythmakers podcast, brought to you by the Oxford Centre for Fantasy. Visit oxfordcenterforfantasy.org to join in the fun. Find out about our online courses, in-person stays in Oxford, plus visit our shop for great gifts. Tell a friend and subscribe wherever you find your favourite podcasts worldwide.